So if you weren't familiar with the word tariff before this week, no doubt you are now. The global economy bracing for the impact of President Trump's long-promised tariffs, which are now going into effect. Already, we've seen the impact on the stock market. And that's before the start of the potential fallout on everyday items like food and clothing. Capitol Hill correspondent Jay O'Brien joins me now from Washington with the latest on all this. Jay, let's start here. President Trump made some comments on social media about the tariffs overnight, and now we're hearing from Elon Musk as well. What can you tell us about both?
Yeah, Phil, these are comments that Elon Musk made via Zoom at an event, and he weighed in specifically on European tariffs. And he says that in his view, he hopes the trade relationship between Europe and the United States eventually improves. That comes just days before additional tariffs, not the ones that snapped into place today, but steeper, more individualized tariffs on the European Union will snap into place in just days. Elon Musk said he hopes at one point in the future there is a free trade zone between Europe and the United States. Obviously, that is not the case at this hour. And these comments making headlines because obviously it is the exact opposite of the position of this administration right now, which is levying tariffs on the European Union, not to mention hundreds of other countries. Again, some starting today, others starting in just days from now.
So as this is all unfolding, Jay, the Senate passed a revised budget resolution, which might not be smooth sailing in the House. What comes next for President Trump's legislative agenda?
So this is just the blueprint. It's just the first step in putting together the larger federal budget, which is going to be the vehicle which Congress uses to pass President Trump's sweeping legislative agenda. We're talking about everything from no tax on tips to all of his campaign promises that have a legislative component, things of that nature, energy policy reform. All of it gets packed into this one big, beautiful bill, as the president has said. Remember, the House already passed its blueprint, its step one, not long ago, some months back, but there was some consternation in doing that. Mike Johnson at one point had to cancel the vote, then abruptly call it back on because he had some hardliners in his party who originally voted no, then they turned to yes. Now what Mike Johnson has got to do again is pass this Senate blueprint because the Senate changed his blueprint and sent it back to him to pass, and it remains to be seen if he can get everybody in his party in the same boat in order to do that pretty much a second time, Phil.
All right, we'll be watching this week. Jay O'Brien from D.C. Jay, thank you. For more now on the impacts of these tariffs across the U.S. and the economy there, I'm joined by Jonathan Gold, Vice President of the Supply Chain and Customs Policy at the National Retail Federation. Jonathan, thanks so much for taking the time to talk this through with us. You represent the world's largest retail trade association. What kind of impact are you anticipating from this trade war?
Thanks, Phil. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. Obviously, the impact of the trade war is going to be pretty significant. I mean, you have to start with the fact that, tariff is a tax that is paid by the U.S. importers. It's going to be paid by retailers, both large and small, manufacturers who import inputs to production. And unfortunately, those costs will eventually get passed along to the U.S. consumer.
What are you hearing, though, from consumers and small businesses? How concerned are they about this?
They're extremely concerned. I mean, I think you've seen consumer confidence drop over the past couple of months. We did some recent polling where consumers expressed concern about prices increasing as a result of the tariffs. We just had about 75 small businesses here in Washington, D.C. the day that the tariffs were announced, and they're extremely concerned about their viability, their ability to stay in business, and what they're going to have to do to absorb these costs. They're going to pass them along, unfortunately.
So then let's take Apple and Nike as two examples here. Both of these companies do a majority of their production in Asia. What would you be advising them to do right now?
Well, I think the challenge right now for all companies, is they're looking at their supply chains. Many took the advice back in 2018 when the first tariffs went into place and they shifted out of China. They went elsewhere in Southeast Asia, to Mexico. Some came back to the U.S. But now they were looking for options. There are no options because we now have the 10% global tariff started today, and then we've got the more increased tariffs starting on the 9th. So it's very difficult for companies to shift their supply chains. It's not something they can do overnight. It takes time, it takes months, if not years, to make those shifts.
You're a supply chain expert. I'm wondering which part of the global supply chain you think is most vulnerable to a trade battle like this.
I think the entire supply chain is vulnerable because, again, these tariffs being applied on a global basis. So we've got tariffs going against our allies, which we kind of question if that's the right move to take. Look, we all agree that there are certain actors that don't abide by the trade rules, and we want to see better trade deals. But applying tariffs in a broad-based manner, we don't think is the right approach. We need to be more targeted and strategic on how we use our tariffs.
All right, Jonathan Gold, thanks for the expertise. We appreciate you taking the time.